Greetings, Rebel fans. My name is Jason Kelly. This is the Let's Run podcast. I want to welcome you all to the show today. I apologize for the interesting hour that I'm doing this live stream. Lots going on in the UNLV football and the Runnin Rebel basketball world right now. We have a ranked matchup coming up against Utah State at the Thomas and Mack tomorrow. This podcast will act as a sort of preview to that game, although I may go live. I'll very briefly touch on that game before I get out of here, during this podcast today. And I will talk, of course, about all of the recruiting news coming out of the UNLV football world. There's a ton. Dan Mullen has been signing people left and right, and it has been an impressive show of his skills as a recruiter. However, there are some things that I have found interesting in terms of his strategy, the kind of guys that he's going for. It's really been, frankly, it's been fascinating to see the type of player that Dan Mullen has gone after. Frankly, he's gone after some players that I wouldn't have gone after. And it's not that I wouldn't have gone after them because I think that they're not good players. No, on the contrary, I think he's gone after some really wonderful players that are really solid. But I'm not 100% sure about the character of some of the guys that he's gone after. And that's really tough because oftentimes players are not going to be perfect. They're young guys, they're young kids, but there's just a lot going on right there to get into. So first, let's talk about the Runnin Rebels. So it's been a few days. Interesting news. Bear Cherry, Bears had kind of a disappointing year, but I still, have a lot of belief in Bear as potential. I think he can turn this season around. He got a haircut, which I think was pretty interesting. I wouldn't want to play with hair that long running up and down the court, especially hair that's not tied. So I think that was a good call. Not that that's going to make any meaningful difference, and I'm glad that he, I hope that was his choice. But really interesting. The Runnin Rebels, still haven't gotten any positive news. I think if you're holding out hope that a guy like Jace Whiting or a guy like Robert Whaley is going to be available for the rest of this year. Jace Whiting probably a little more likely to come available than Robert Whaley, but certainly Robert Whaley is probably not going to play the rest of the year. We don't have confirmation for that yet, but as more time passes, as more games pass, it's really looking like he is gone for the year. The Runnin Rebels have really struggled. They're coming off of 2 losses, 81-59 versus Boise State and 84-62, basically 2 22, 21-point losses on the road to good teams. But still, after you get blown out against Boise State, you would hope that there would be a little bit of fight in the next game against Colorado State. And we just really didn't see that. So what can we expect tomorrow against Utah State? Well, Utah State is projected to win the game 77-72. Ken Pom does see it as a close game. It's a home game for the Rebels. I don't know what I expect the crowd to be. I do expect it to be one of the, probably the best crowd of the season, although it is a late game. I think it starts at 8 o'clock in the Thomas and Mack, which makes it really late. It is a weekday. It's a work day. And I'm sure that people will be probably a little hesitant to stay out that late, but if you were, deciding whether you wanted to go tomorrow to the game versus Utah State, I would highly recommend it because Utah State plays a really fun brand of basketball. UNLV, through all of our faults, we still have some fun players that I really enjoy watching. Just for a brief preview, I think I'll go live tomorrow before the Utah State game. But Utah State's best players, probably Ian Martinez, Mason Falslev. One of those two guys, probably Mason Falslev. He's a 6'3" guard, shoots it really well, plays under control. Carson Templin is a guy that we recruited heavily to come to UNLV. He's a guy for Utah State that we're going to have to look out for. Other guys, they have a pretty deep bench. Abin Gadaresi Tucker Anderson, Dexter Akano. There's really good players, up and down this Utah State roster. Reno Hader brings up Martinez. Yeah, Martinez is a freakishly athletic guard. He was a Danny Sprinkle player last year for the Aggies. He did not follow Danny Sprinkle to Washington, deciding to stay and play for Utah State. So it's going to be a big chore and a big task to try and slow down this Utah State team. What Runnin Rebel team is going to show up? I really don't know. I mean, the two blowout losses have happened on the road. We don't know what fight they're going to show. I mean, if it's a bloodbath early though, we could be in for a very long night. I'm hoping to get some really good play out of Bear Cherry. I think if this team wants to be even somewhat competent and somewhat competitive in the Mountain West, Bear Cherry has to be a good player, not just an average player, but a good player. And it's going to be up to him to turn this around. And it has to be done on the defensive end and with rebounding. So, yeah, this Utah State game, I mean, I hope people can come out to it. I did want to spend the majority of time today on recruiting, but given that we are in the prime of basketball season, I think it would be I would be derelicting my duty if I did not talk about the Runnin' Rebels first and foremost. My feelings going into the Utah State game, I think it's a toss-up. I think you could see a very good version of UNLV that shoots really well and gets up and down the floor and plays with heart and passion. Or you could see a team that just completely lies down and dies in a program that looks like it's heading in the wrong direction. I'm not 100% sure which Runnin' Rebel team is going to show up. Yeah, I'll be there too. And as always, if you're at the games, I invite you to send me a message, send me a DM. I will respond, and I will meet up with you. We can shake hands. We can talk a little bit of Runnin' Rebel hoops or UNLV football, whatever you want. I'm willing to meet up with any player. I am at every game. So I'll get into a little bit more of the specifics tomorrow. Not really sure how I feel about this one yet, but this Utah State team is going to be they're going to be a little vulnerable. They're coming off of a huge game against Boise State where they kind of pulled one out of their butts. So I think there's vulnerability there, but this Runnin' Rebel team just hasn't shown that they can beat a good team yet this season. And this Utah State team might be the best team they've played so far this year. Mississippi State might be the best team. They're definitely among the 2 or 3 best teams that the Runnin' Rebels have played this year. So lots and lots and lots going on there. I wanted to talk a little bit about football. I've had I've been talking a lot on Twitter today about people that have, about Pac-12 stuff and about football stuff. But, the football recruiting news it's been fast and furious. UNLV, I'm not sure where we are in terms of team rankings. Let me see if we have moved up at all. I want to see the team rankings. Let's see the team rankings. So just double checking this. On3 still does not have us ranked in the transfer portal, but they do take a while to update. Their 60th last I saw. 247, I think, had us up to 60th. We're getting a lot of names in the transfer portal. Tons of different types of names. A lot of defensive backs and corners. A lot of really interesting characters. So let's talk about. I'm going to share my screen here, and that way we can kind of talk about what we're seeing from the UNLV transfer portal. So let me pull this up. Mountain West, UNLV. Let's share my screen. So Jason Rubin asks a question about, what was our NIL budget for football? Now, if you come to me and listen to my show, I'm not an inside information guy. I don't have an exact figure. I just know what has been reported and what has been speculated. That when Dan Mullen was hired, there was a contingency that we would, I think it was double our NIL budget. So I think we have a significantly higher NIL budget than we've ever had before. However, the players that we're getting, I don't really see them as being incredibly expensive players. Like I'm sure we spent a decent amount of money on guys like Alex Orji and Anthony Colandrea, which, investing in the quarterback position is a very good idea. Even having more than one name in the quarterback position is a very good idea, just because you don't really know what's going to happen with injuries. Last year, for example, we spent a decent amount of time, energy, and focus on the Matthew Sluka, Hodge Malik Williams thing. And I remember thinking, wow, that's kind of duplicative. We have two quarterbacks that are kind of similar statures. And it ended up being an incredible decision to have both quarterbacks on the roster. So I'm sure that we spent money on Colin Drea. There are guys like John Lewis, I think we spent money on, Chief Borders. But a lot of like the bigger names, the star names, the 4 and 5 star, ex players coming from places like LSU and Texas A&M and M and Alabama and Georgia. I don't think that those players cost as much simply because this is their third and second or third opportunity. These guys have been at power programs, have not been able to see the field a ton. There have been questions about character with a lot of these guys. Let's go ahead and share my screen here. Um, yeah, that was the wide receiver. We did flip a wide receiver from Utah. Um, I don't know. I can't say that I can accurately value like what all these players are worth. But I don't think that some of them are as worth as, their Twitter bio and their history and pedigree would seem, just because we're giving guys second and third chances. So taking a look at the UNLV transfer portal right now. Um, so Denver Harris, he's a CB. This was one of the guys who was ranked as a 5 star out of high school. As a transfer, he transferred to where did he commit? Where did Denver commit as a player? I don't remember where Denver Harris started. He started at one of the big schools. Let me just look that up. I want to make sure I'm giving you guys good information here. Texas A&M. I believe he started at LSU and then went to Texas A&M, and then there it is. Thank you. LSU, Texas A&M, and then UTSA. So he was a player that there was character issues at his first two schools. However, from all accounts, from what I've seen from UTSA fans, he was a he didn't have any character issues at UTSA, but he didn't play the whole time at UTSA. He wasn't a year-long starter. So I mean, you see that 5 star next to his name, and there's definitely talent there. But I would say he was kind of a bust at UTSA. I think there's definitely talent, and I trust Dan Mullen and the staff to get that talent out of him. But who really knows? This is another guy, Jalen Lee, big player, 6'3", 294. He's coming from LSU. He's a player that didn't really, he was a 4 star out of high school. Didn't really get a ton of time at LSU. I mean, he did play some. But it's a guy that we're giving a second chance. Chief Borders. This is a guy that I think had a little bit. I think we invested a decent amount into him. He's an edge rusher. Very good player. I think he's actually probably a little underrated transfer portal wise. Another guy, Kamuela Kawe. Underutilized at Arizona. He would probably say versus did the coaching staff trust him a lot? We don't really know how good these players are. I mean, it's great that they're coming from big name schools. Dejon Reynolds, he's a wide receiver, big player, 6'2", 210, some size, has a little bit of production, but nothing crazy. Tayshawn Lyons, this guy, he was originally a commit. He was originally a commit to the University of Washington. And he was a big commit for Washington. They thought he was going to be their next great wide receiver. Didn't end up working out at Washington. When Kalen DeBoer left Washington to go to Alabama, he did not take Tayshawn Lyons with him. And then he went to the University of Utah, didn't really get on the field. Now, the University of Utah had well-documented quarterback struggles in the year, so it's not like I completely hold that against him. But again, I mean, it's a guy with a ton of talent that didn't really work out in his last spot. That seems to be the type of player that UNLV is chasing here. Caden Costa, we really needed a replacement for Caden Chittenden. He's a guy that has a lot of experience. He did struggle a little bit last year, but as we saw with Boise State's kicker in their Fiesta Bowl, it's really tough. Kickers, they can have up and down years. They can be great one year and bad the next year. And yeah, I mean, it's tough to guess what these guys are getting NIL wise. We really just don't know. Football's, besides the quarterback position, maybe a wide receiver position, we're just not going to be able to tell what these guys are getting. Costa got suspended a year for PEDs as a kicker, by the way. So this is just kind of an odd group here. And then of course Alex Orji, who was a 6'2", 226, big quarterback, strong. Michigan, I still think Colin Drea is our quarterback. I think Alex Orji is going to kind of be a situational back that we use, in short kind of goal line situations, red zone situations. But that's a lot of talent. Yeah, I mean, I think that it'll be good to have a competition between the two, Colin Drea and Alex Orji for quarterback. I think Cam Friel staying around is good for that as well. Now we get into some name. This day kind of felt like between today, it kind of felt like a crapshoot in terms of the names we were getting. Not that these guys aren't very talented, but yes, you were about to. I appreciate you bringing it up, Jason. Another Jason, a fellow Jason. Thank you. Yeah, John Lewis is a great get. There are some really good gets. If you look back last week, John Lewis was a 4-star player, Mississippi State, but he is, he's a redshirt junior, 225. He's the size of a linebacker that you want. I think there's a lot of potential there. Big fan. Matthew Burns, he was a 3-star, out of Houston, a good player. I think he's got a lot of potential. This is kind of one of our kind of one of our deluge of tight ends that we have. James Firmino, this guy's from where is he from again? Temple. He'll be an inside offensive lineman. Got the size. We had a connection with the Temple staff that got us a long snapper and a lineman. He's got the size and the talent. We're going to see what he is. He's higher rated as a transfer than he was as a recruit. So I think that there's some serious potential there. A couple of DBs that we got, and a CB that we got here. Amaris Brown from USF. Pardon. We saw here. There's Casey Kane going to Liberty. He was a good transfer. I was a big fan of him. I was sad that he left us. Landon Thomas, big lineman, a redshirt freshman. Young guy, didn't get a ton of playing time. I think he's got some potential. But again, he was rated the same as a transfer as he was as a recruit. We want to make sure we get all Terrence Welch. Again, big recruit. There were some character issues. I'm not going to get into that, but there were some problems in his past. Again, one of those kind of odd characters that we're getting. Jake Pope. I mean, this is the odd character of all odd characters. If you didn't know, he was dancing on the sideline after a Georgia loss. He was an Alabama player and then a Georgia player. Didn't really see the field in either place. Does that mean that he's going to be, a bad player for UNLV or bad like he was at Georgia and Alabama? No, he could definitely get some playing time. He's a safety. But he didn't get any playing time at Georgia or Alabama. So you see that Georgia name and, we don't really know how he's going to be yet, to be honest with you. Want to make sure I get all the names. That was the prediction that Jalen Lee was going to go to UNLV. Keith Conley left. Catalan left. Okay, now we're in the guys, all of the guys that UNLV lost. Again, Ben Chrisman, this was a recruit that I was a big fan of. He was a bigger recruit out of high school than he was as a transfer, but he was a solid player for Kentucky in the SEC. I think he's a good get. JoJo Earl, again, a player, ton of potential coming out of high school, went to Alabama, then TCU, but really, never flashed that potential. And I heard there were some possible character issues. We really just don't know. I'm not sure that, you see that talent, you see that 4-star, 96 rating, and it makes your eyes light up, but you have to be realistic about what these guys are going to be. We just don't really know yet. And then Jalen Glover from Utah, also a really big name. So kind of what's the takeaway from all of this? What's the takeaway from, Omieri? There's a couple names that weren't updated there. Troy Omieri. Yes. So Finzix, I always appreciate you, brother. You always do a really great job on Twitter, and I appreciate your support. I think our D line still needs some work. I think we need some big boys that we can recruit. And what you have to understand too, guys, is that This isn't the only transfer portal window. Now, I know the NCAA is moving to eliminate the spring portal. I believe that will be next year that will be implemented. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's next year. UNLV will have the spring portal. They'll be able to look at their guys in workouts and practice kind of scenarios, and they'll be able to see who's going to fit and who's not going to fit. There's going to be a time for Dan Mullen to look at the players. He's just trying to get guys in right now. Some of these crazy players that we're seeing right now transferring into UNLV, and some of the players that stayed maybe that we weren't as that didn't get a lot of playing time. There's going to be another opportunity for them to transfer. This is not Dan Mullen's only shot. He's going to be able to use his skill as a talent evaluator, and now that he has a staff in place, there's going to be great chances to improve this team further. After spring ball, in the spring transfer portal window, I should say. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that this is over. There's a lot. I apologize. There were some names that were missing from that on three, but I wanted to get kind of the point across. Colin Drea wasn't there, for example. I don't know why he didn't appear. But yeah, we have a lot of tight ends. We had the guy from Florida who was a tight end. We had a Mississippi State tight end, I believe. I think that Mullen right now, if I had to describe what he's doing, and I trust him as a football mind and as a football leader, if I had to describe what Dan Mullen is doing right now, he is compiling talent. He's trying to get back into the game. He's compiling, the best physically talented players that he can. Still a little bit of work to do, especially on the defensive line, and probably at least one more on the offensive line as well, I think. But he's just bringing them in. He's bringing them into the UNLV fold. And he is, I don't know much about him. There was a tight end. He was a big guy. Wasn't he like 6'6"? I don't know much about the tight end from the Fresno Community College. I mean, there's so many players coming in and I'm so focused on basketball right now that it's hard to evaluate all of them. I haven't had time to look at clips. I'm going to wait, until we start getting reports out of practice. Because again, I'm not the type of person. I can't be at practice. I'm not in that place in my life, still at law school and still working. But I think what he's trying to do is build as talented of a roster as possible. And, this picture that we have right now of what UNLV's roster is going to be next year is not complete. Crazy stuff is happening in the transfer portal. We just saw our boy Matthew Sluka, the quitter himself, although I actually think Sluka was a good quarterback, and I was really bummed about the way that situation went down. Let me stop that screen. I was really bummed about that situation that went down with him. So, I trust Dan Mullen. I think this is a lot of swings where there's going to be some misses, there's going to be some hits, and there's going to be some work to do in the spring portal to kind of round out the roster. So I want to make sure I get all the questions. I want to make sure that I get everybody that asked anything up. Friel for QB1. I think Cam Friel will probably be given a chance at QB1. I don't expect him to get it, obviously. But Friel has a lot of respect in the locker room. And I could see Cam Friel, getting a fair shake. I don't think he's going to get it. I don't think he's talented enough. But he is certainly a good enough person and a good enough teammate that he will get full consideration. Landon Thomas is going to be a star for years to come. Don't know. I think he's kind of been a bust so far, but maybe Dan Mullen with his offensive guru mind is going to be the person to unleash that. What happened to Jaleel McCain, the wide Louis receiver? I'm not sure. The ASU wide receiver will be good for us. I think that's Omieri. I think that's a great call. I think he is going to be good for us. The wide receiver room does look really deep. We talked about this one. Yeah, Reno Hader brings up that the wide receiver room is going to be a lot deeper this year. Yeah, I expect, last year when I look at Hodge and the passing that was being done on the team, it was a lot of just kind of running the ball and, staring down Ricky White down the field. And I think we're going to have a more balanced offense. Now, I don't know that our offensive scoring numbers will be better, but I think we will have a more balanced offense. You're going to see the ball get spread around a little bit, and we're going to be able to use the talent that we have on the outside a little bit more. Tons of tight ends. Yep, absolutely. There's a lot of tight ends. What do I think about Utah State? Minus 4.5. So I'm not a gambler. I really don't know. I mean, um, I don't really know in terms of betting this UNLV Utah State game. It's a crapshoot in my opinion. You could either see a 1 or 2 point UNLV Runnin Rebel loss, or you could see a complete blowout. You could see the Runnin Rebels win. Utah State has shown a lot of vulnerability, so it's going to depend on the value that you're getting. At the 4.5 number. It's going to depend all on value there, like what you're investing into it. I think it could make the game really fun. I think the Rebels could absolutely beat Utah State tomorrow night, but I guess we're going to see. I wouldn't love it though. I think there's a good chance that we get blown out, but you never know. The spring game absolutely will be exciting. I'm worried that the spring game is going to be going on. I am going to be taking a break from the podcast to study for the bar exam. I'm going to try and get off Twitter completely during that time, which is kind of a bummer because I'm going to miss talking to all you guys. Maybe I'll get on occasionally, but feel like I need to sacrifice something in order to make sure that I give myself the best chance of passing the bar. Did just finish law school, so the spring game most definitely will be exciting. I'm hoping to be able to do some better coverage than I did last year of it. I guess we'll see. At times, it seemed like the ball wasn't going forward through the air without Ricky. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and Hodge was missing on a lot of deep throws last year, and there just didn't seem to be great connection with wide receivers outside of Ricky, and teams were able to bracket Ricky in coverage really well. So, yeah, I mean, we're probably paying Colindre and Orji too much attention to start Friel. Definitely. I don't think Friel really has a chance to start. Friel is the kind of guy that, he probably could get a roster spot on another team. But as a quarterback, UNLV is probably always going to be his best shot of being a starting quarterback. So unless he's willing to play, as a wide receiver or something, Friel was just going to stick around. And I'm grateful that he did because I think Friel's a good guy and a good player and a good teammate. So that's kind of my overall opinions of Dan Mullen's process. Yeah, guys, I'm totally with you guys. Colindre is going to be QB1. Orji will be great in special packages. He'll be great on the goal line in the red zone. But I don't see Alex Orji taking that spot from Colindre. I don't think that Dan Mullen's the kind of guy that likes to I don't think that Orji is a Dan Mullen quarterback. Despite Tim Tebow being, the consummate kind of dual threat running, not a great pocket passer quarterback, but yeah, I mean, we're going to see some Orgies in the end zone. He's going to rumble down towards the goal line. He's going to, we're going to use him in maybe a wildcat package or something and let him cook, in the red zone. That's something that we didn't have last year. So I'm excited. I think Mullen's doing great. There's some cautious optimism. There was a couple of articles that did have UNLV as a preseason, way too early college football playoff hopeful. I just want to say publicly that I think that that's a little far-fetched at this time. We really don't know. That's mostly out of respect for Dan Mullen. People just love him in the college football world. But Boise State should absolutely be the favorite in the Mountain West next year and should absolutely be the favorite for the college football playoff next year. Despite losing Genty, they really are bringing back basically the rest of their roster. They're bringing back a very good quarterback. They are losing Dirk Cutter, their guru offensive coordinator, but I have a lot of faith in that Boise program that they can rebound. And it's going to be up to UNLV to take them down next year. I mean, that's got to be the goal. The goal's got to be Boise. Now, you can't neglect the other games on your schedule, but Boise is going to be the priority. Chasing that program down and bringing UNLV into the place of relevance that they deserve to be. So hopefully I'll be able to go live tomorrow before the Utah State game. We can talk a little bit about that game before we head out to the Thomas and Mack. But I cannot wait. I love playing Utah State. I love the Utah State fan base. I've really grown to respect them and like them over the past couple of years. And they're really good guys and gals and whatever. So please come out to the Thomas and Mack tomorrow. I will be there. Reach out, talk to you guys at the game. I appreciate you all. Dan Mullen's killing it. UNLV is on the rise. The Pac-12 stuff is stupid, and I'm not going to talk about it on my show because you guys probably see me tweeting about it plenty. So have a great night, and let's run.